out loud. Okay, go ahead and read it out loud. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Newspaper subscriber. Arnott's editorial argues that by making certain fundamental changes in government, we would virtually eliminate our most vexing social ills. Okay. But clearly this conclusion is false. All right. After all, the argument Arnott makes for this claim depends on the dubious assumption that government can be trusted to act in the interest of the public. Okay. So can I think out loud?
Yes, yes, please think out loud.
The conclusion is that this conclusion is false. The idea that fundamental changes in the government would eliminate our vexing social ills. And the reason why is because this argument says that you can't always trust that government's going to act in public interest of the public. They might not, so they might not fix the social ills. Fundamental changes might not necessarily do that because their interests are different.
Excellent.
So, okay.
Okay, sorry, hang on. You read so fast. Okay, so yes, so this editorial argues that making these changes would eliminate all of our social ills, but we say that conclusion is false. So we're saying that there's no way that those fundamental changes will eliminate all our problems because your claim depends on this assumption that the government can be trusted to act in the interest of the public.
Right. So you're saying
what is your flaw here that you see? What is the gap between the reasoning and the conclusion?
Yes. So before I get into that, I just want to ask, because you said all. The sentence says virtually eliminate. Does that also mean all in this test? Virtually?
No, virtually eliminate. I would say that's like nearly eliminate or like pretty much. Like you don't even say like that's pretty much eliminate. Yeah.
Okay. So we could think of it as like most, like 99%.
Yes, yes. Like I would say, yeah, like mass majority.
Okay. So which of the following most accurately expresses a flaw in the argument? So we're looking for a flaw here. Okay.
So well, I want you to predict what's the gap between the reasoning and the conclusion.
Right. So right off the bat, this is what stands out to me the most is the idea that this conclusion is false. Like, no, what you're saying is not true, based on the idea that they essentially they're implying like they can't be trusted to act in the public interest of the public, but that doesn't mean that they won't. So I think
like, and what do you mean? Go even farther than that. Like just because they could the goal happen without acting in the interest of the public?
It could. Like that's not
how so?
Because acting in the public interest it's a good thing, and I think we're just inclined to say, oh yeah, you have to act in the public interest of the public in order to eliminate social ills, but you don't have to in order to. You could have a conclusion without having that as a foundation.
You could be like their interest could be like they just want to be the most liked person in the world. Like that could be their like they're not acting in the interest of the public. They're acting out of selfish ambition, but they're still are still getting to that end goal.
Exactly. It's like trying to get to the beach and being like, oh well, the only way to get there is a car, and it's like, no, I have a train. Like
excellent, great analogy. I love that, Nadia. Okay, so go ahead and go on to
which of the following expresses the flaw in the arguments? It repudiates a claim merely grounds on an adequate argument is given for it. That's not really what they're doing. So they didn't really provide any argument. An adequate argument has been given for it. That's not really what's happening here. Retreats. Can I go to the next?
So yeah, I'm sorry. I'm thinking. Okay, so yeah, so when it's what claim are we repudiating?
We're repudiating the claim that it would virtually eliminate our social ills.
Yes. And do we repudiate that claim by saying that it has inadequate evidence?
Not really, because no evidence has been presented. So no. Like the person who's making the claim didn't really give us an argument, and that's being refuted. They just said it's going to do this, but they didn't give us an argument why. If that makes sense.
Okay. Let's go on to B.
You just have like a look that's like I can't read them on.
No, oh yeah, sorry. No, I'm trying. I process in my head. I'm processing everything that you say.
You have a poker face, and I'm just trying to read it, and I'm like, oh, this.
Oh, yeah, you won't be able to. You won't be able to.
All right. So it treats a change that is required for virtual elimination of assessment. As a change that will guarantee. No. Well,
why is that wrong?
It treats change that is required. The word required, I'm fixated on a little bit for virtual elimination of society's most vexing ills. So what's the change they're referring to? The change is.
I love that. Great step.
It's a change that is required. What is that change? The change is required. I think that's vague because there's not They just said making certain fundamental changes.
I think that the changes required would have, I think what they're assuming here is like the interest of the public, or like can be trusted to act. It doesn't make sense. Like, I think what this author is assuming is that it treats the idea that like that the government can be trusted to act in the interest of the public is required for
Right.
the elimination as a change that will guarantee the virtual, like, no.
It's not required. Right.
Yeah, it's not a required. Like, we're actually saying that like it's, yeah. Okay.
Could you just open that one more time just so I could read it one more time to make sure I understood that?
Yes.
So it needs a change that is required, change referring to can be trusted to act in the public as a change that will guarantee the vital elimination. And okay, so let's say that change was required. Let's just say it was.
Well,
Just
they're acting, this person is acting as if this change is required, but they're not acting as if it is like, is that this alone will guarantee
yes.
the
Yeah.
goal.
So this is like similar to the question type for necessary. It's
Yeah. Like, just
yeah,
because something's necessary doesn't mean it's sufficient.
right. Exactly. Right. So this would be for this argument, you're saying that government acting in the interest of the public is necessary, but you never said anything about it being sufficient, so B would be wrong.
Yes.
Okay. It feels to consider that even if the conclusion is false, some of the assumptions used to justify that conclusion may nonetheless be true. Uh, I think this is the opposite of what they're saying. Um, hold on, maybe. The conclusion is false. The conclusion being that this would eliminate society's ills, the assumption used to justify. I'm going to be honest with you. My inclination is to get rid of C. I don't know.
Yeah, that it doesn't matter that at least one of the assumptions is true. The conclude, like, we don't do that. It fails to consider that even if a conclusion is false, like, we're trying to prove that it is false. So that's a, yeah, that's a bad answer.
Yeah, but and it's basically saying the opposite of what
Yeah, like, we're saying it is false. Like, yeah.
we're trying to say that your assumption is false, but the conclusion may be true. Not the conclusion is false and the assumption is true. We're
Yeah.
trying to do the opposite.
Yes.
It distorts. I couldn't put that into words, so I was like, get rid of it, and I just didn't want to say get rid of it without telling you why. It distorts the opponent's argument and then attacks this distorted argument a little bit. Let me see. I'm gonna keep that open just for now and go to E until I see which one's a better answer. It uses the key term because it's only two left, so I might as well do that. It uses the key term government in one sense in a premise and another the conclusion. It's really not what they're doing. It's gonna have to be. I'm gonna have to go
Okay.
with
Well, okay, so let's go back. Why what do you like? I agree that it's not E. What do you like about D?
um two things. One, through process of elimination, it makes the most sense, and the other two, you kind of are distorting the argument because you're saying uh you're presenting an argument that was never said, which was basically you have to have the government has to trust the interests of the public in order for this to happen. We never said that. You're saying that, and then you're saying, well, they don't, so this isn't going to happen. Like you're presenting an argument that wasn't there.
Okay. So actually our answer is A.
Oh crap.
I just wanted to hear your thoughts on this and you're confident. Like, what does distort mean?
Yeah, when you ask me this question, like I know what it means. How am I going to put this into words? It means like
If I distort someone, what do I do?
you're how do I phrase it? Distorting means to like mess it up.
Yeah, or like twist it, right? Or
Right.
like it's like a slimy thing, right? Like if I distort something, like if you distort a picture, you like edit it, right? Or if I distort what you're saying, I take and I put it out of context.
Like a dishonest thing to do.
It can be, right? Especially in this context, like in a flaw, when you just in a flaw question, when you distort something, it's like if I said you take something and you take it out of context, right? Like people distort what politicians say all the time, right?
Correct.
And so do we take the opponent's argument and distort it and be like, and then like, and put it in like, and twist their words?
Yeah, I mean, it's like that's why I said dishonest because you're twisting things, you're manipulating.
But we don't twist their argument.
But you're assuming. This is why I thought distorted might make some sense because I was like, you're assuming an argument that wasn't said.
But just because we do that, just because we assume something, like we say that this claim depends on a dubious assumption. That's
Right.
our opinion. Like, we're not distorting or changing their argument.
Right.
Like, this is like saying, okay, so what distort is like when you say, um, Nadia thinks that you should spend more money on education than homeless shelters. They're if you said this, like you said that you should spend more money on education than homework shelters, and then I go and say, um, Nadia doesn't think that homeless shelters are important. I'm
Uh,
distorting your argument,
uh,
right? Does that make sense?
so, like misrepresenting.
Yes, they're misrepresenting. We're not misrepresenting what are not said at all.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. It's okay. Yes,
We're just disagreeing with it.
yes, I hear that. Okay, so yeah, so if this was like one of those question types where they said something along the lines of like, after all, the argument makes this claim is not correct because
This social ill could never be solved.
the social ill could, yeah, or like,
Because
or
that one, because like virtually nearly all of them could be solved. And if we're like they're like, and we're saying like, but there's this one like we're just distorting it and thinking like, well, because they can't do absolutely everything, it can't be true or something.
right, or like something ridiculous like, oh, because they wanna change the social ills, then they don't care about like other problems,
Yeah,
something like.
yeah, yes, okay. So let's go back to
Yeah, let's go over that because I'm very confused.
why does A work? So go ahead and read this one again.
I don't know why it works, but let's read it. It repudiates a claim merely on the grounds that an inadequate argument has been given for it. So I've seen this answer choice more than once on the LSAT. And normally when I've seen it, the passage will say something like, it's a hot day, so we should, or like Mary is saying something like, it's a hot day, so we should get ice cream. And then Tom responds by saying, um, well, it being a hot day isn't an adequate enough reason to get ice cream.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and this kind of goes along the lines of our prediction where we said there could be another way that they get to this ending vexing social ills without the government trusting the acts of in the interest of the public. We say that that conclusion is false just because or not does not give enough evidence for the argument.
Could we dissect this a little bit, like word for word? It refers to the flaw in the
The
argument.
it is it is referring to this conclusion is false.
Okay.
So like essentially the newspaper subscribers conclusion like reprimands or disagrees with a claim that fundamental changes in the government we would virtually eliminate our most vexing social ills with the evidence that are not gave it not enough evidence to support it.
Okay.
So because we say our conclusion is this conclusion is false because Arnott's claim is based on a dubious assumption. So we're saying like it's not like we're saying that that claim can't be true because Arnott's argument is given on on crappy reasoning. But our prediction was that conclusion could be true, that the fundamental changes do change the most vexing social ills, even for a different reason, right? Like maybe the government cannot be trusted to act in the interest of the public, but there's a different reason why the government would want to eliminate all of these social ills, right?
I hear that, and by the way, when I'm looking down, I'm like looking at my nails and like thinking. I'm not
Yeah,
like,
yeah, you're fine.
you know. This is where I'm having a hard time with this. The inadequate argument has been given for it. I'm having a hard time trying to figure out. Um,
We say that are not gave an inadequate argument. We're our conclusion is Arnott is wrong because his evidence isn't good enough. That is what A is saying.
give me a second. Let me
Yeah,
process this.
no worries.